Welcome to the second segment of our Lenten study here at Lakeside Chautauqua. I'm Dr. Charles Yoost, the Senior Director of Religious Life and Pastoral Care, and I'm happy that you've joined me for the second session of 7 words from the cross. We're going to be looking at the words that Jesus spoke as he was dying, and as Peter's story has mentioned, the words of a dying person are very significant, and very significant indeed when they are the words of Jesus. Our study is based on 2 books. This little book by Peter's story, Listening at Golgotha. It is available at the Fine Print Bookstore and also on Amazon. It was written a few years ago, but it is still available, still in print. And then this book, Thank God It's Friday, by Bishop William Willimon. And I would say that both of these men have been to Lakeside on numerous occasions, and their insights are quite something for us, and they continue to be relevant for our time and for what's going on in our world today. Last week, we talked about the first word that Jesus spoke from the cross. It was a word of forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Remember that it was world religion scholar Houston Smith who said that the classic example of Christianity, the thing that stands out most in looking at world religions, is its emphasis on forgiveness and how hard it is to forgive. Remember, I said last week that St. Augustine, before he became a bishop, in his congregation, when they would say the Lord's Prayer, there were people that would not say the phrase, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who sin against us," because they knew that they were not going to be able to do that, and they didn't want to be hypocrites. How hard it is to forgive. Well, this week, our word is, today you will be with me in paradise. I want to begin by saying that in the gospel, as Jesus is being tried and then taken to Pilate's court, there is a phrase in Mark chapter 14, verse 50, where it says, all of them deserted him and fled. And this verse has haunted me throughout my ministry. All of us have deserted him and fled. It says all the disciples left Jesus, and he was utterly alone to stand trial and to go through the agony of the cross. All the male disciples, that is, the women stood by him. The women were still at the cross, but all the male disciples forsook him and fled. And I wonder what I would have done had I been there. What would you have done had you been there? There's a wonderful African-American spiritual, Were You There When They Crucified My Lord? Listen as Michael Shirtz sings, were you there? Would you have been there? Would you be there if they crucified Jesus today?
Sometimes it causes me to tremble, to tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the pierced him in the side. Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble. Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Sometimes it causes me to tremble, to tremble, to tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
Well, Jesus did not die entirely alone, did he? In his dying, he was again accompanied by people that society had cast out. When Peter's story says, when we invite Jesus into our hearts, he always asks, can I bring my friends? Can I bring my friends? And his friends are those that may not be those that we would consider our friends. Listen as our CEO and president at Lakeside reads these verses from Luke chapter 23, verses 39 to 43.
It says, then one of the criminals hanging there began to yell insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But the other answered, rebuking him, don't you even fear God, since you are undergoing the same punishment? He says, we are punished justly because we are getting back what we deserve. For the things we did but this man has done nothing wrong. And then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise.
Well, these two criminals, one on the right of Jesus and one on the left, were executed because of their bad deeds, because they were so bad. Jesus was executed because he was so good. There is a phrase that we sometimes say, no good deed goes unpunished. And certainly the good deeds of Jesus did not go unpunished, but he hung on Calvary's cross because of what he did. And it was what he did for the good, not for what he did for the bad. I want to ask you, when has what you have done for the good cost you something? When has it cost you to do good? And sometimes it does. And you can probably give examples of that when doing the right thing causes you to be persecuted or to be punished. As we say, no good deed goes unpunished. And sometimes we suffer not for the bad that we do, but for the good that we do. There were two criminals, as I said, on the crosses, one on the right and one on the left of Jesus. And the first one was angry and rebellious. He didn't see why he would have to be there, and he was angry at Jesus for not getting him off of the cross. The other criminal said, remember me, remember me. Jesus has already forgiven him. He has already heard Jesus say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He's already been forgiven by Jesus, and now he is asking Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom. My friends, we repent not to find pardon, but we repent because we discover how deeply we have been pardoned. And so the criminal asked Jesus to remember him. It is a cry of desperation as the life is going out of him. It reminds us of the Good Samaritan story, where the prodigal son story, where the prodigal son is in the far country, and he comes home and he says, remember me, Father, can you just give me the scraps under your table? And the father responds not by punitive action, but by being extravagantly generous. He kills the fatted calf. He throws a big party for his son who was lost and is now found. And this is Jesus with the criminal on the cross. And he says, today you will be with me in paradise. Today, this very day, you will be with me in paradise. And it is a theme throughout the Bible that now is the day of salvation. Today is the day. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but today. There is an urgency to the gospel. We are not given, my friends, we are not given an inordinate amount of time. Today is the day, and we're supposed to seize the day. Living with Jesus is not only a future reality, but it is a present reality. We not only think about going to heaven someday when we die, but we can have a life with Jesus right here, right and now. When someone asks the question, where is paradise? Where is this place that Jesus is talking about? In reality, paradise is any place that Jesus is. And so there is a sense in which this criminal, as he put his faith and trust in Jesus, was already in paradise. And even though he was dying and going through this agony, he was already with Jesus. And what can be better than that? I want to ask you today, where do we need God to enlarge our hearts? And where do we need God to enlarge the heart of the church that we are part of, to be more extravagant, to be more accepting, as Jesus was, even on the cross? Would you ponder that with me? Last week we asked, who do I need to forgive? This week I ask you, to whom do I need to reach out? Where do I need to be more extravagant in my love and in my relationships? Would you pray with me now? Dear God, we give you thanks that no matter who we are, no matter where we are, that you offer us the gift of new life, the gift of life in your presence. We ask that you would help us to remember that the new life that you offer is not just for someday when we die, but each and every day of our lives that we live and serve and work with you. Help us to remember these words, that yes, we can be with you in paradise, and that paradise can begin even today, even now. Thank you for joining me for this second segment of our Lenten study, 7 Words from the Cross. Next week will be the third word, Woman, here is your son. Son, here is your mother. Thank you again for joining me, and have a great rest of your day.